All right. Welcome back to another show. Our regular special guest, Kenny Troiano, is back in the house. We want to welcome everybody back for this show on what kind of breeder are you? You guys come in, like, share, share the video. Kenny, how you doing, sir?
I'm doing good. I'm glad to be back. This will be
Glad you're
what,
back.
the time we work together.
Oh yeah,
Not
yeah.
counting the time you were on my show.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah. That was good. That was
yeah. Well,
yeah.
it was kind of neat that you were able to fill in, or I thought you were going to fill in because my co-host wasn't supposed to make it, or at least gave me the impression he was going to make it. So I brought in Joe, and he ended up showing up anyways, which I'm glad he did because he knows more about dogs than I do. I mean, I know about the breeding process and I can help dog breeders, but he knew more about the dogs. So it ended up being a really good show. I'm glad you
Yeah,
made it.
yeah. It was good to meet everybody. Everybody was in the comments. Some of the people from the dog world checking me,
Yeah.
making sure I'm on point. You know what I mean? So yeah, it's been good. Hey, Vicente Moore, how you doing, brother?
I'm
He's
just
saying
so
hi to
glad.
you.
Oh yeah, hi. How you doing?
Yeah.
I'm just so glad that the information that I'm providing is helping even the dog breeders. That
Mhm.
we're, my saying is, we're not only going to change the way you think about breeding, but the way you breed we say our chickens, our fowl. But it works for everybody. We are trying to change the way you think about breeding because most people aren't breeding properly, or they don't understand the breeding process. So if we can get you to think differently, then hopefully you'll start changing the way you actually breed your dogs, in
Mhm.
this case. And excuse me if I keep saying fowl or chickens because that's what I'm used to. But just know that even though I'm a chicken breeder, the process that we're teaching works for everybody. I mean, in my Breeders' Academy, we have, chicken breeders, game fowl breeders. We have ducks, geese, of course. We have cattle, pigs, dogs, guinea pigs. We have guppies, bees. I mean, we have everything. I can't think of anything we don't have in there, and it all works for them. So just understand when I'm talking that maybe I may reference chickens or maybe fowl, but the principles I'm using or talking about work for you guys too. They really do.
True. All right, Kenny. Well, you say there are four types of breeders in
Yeah.
across all animal breeding.
I believe so. If you think about what we're talking about here or what we're going to talk about, I think if you've been a breeder for any length of time, you're going to see the differences in these type of breeders. Okay. And I broke them down into master breeders, which represents about 1% of all the breeders. Think about that. Of all the breeders out there, there's only a handful that are what you would call a really good breeder who really understands what they're doing, you know. And then we have the apprentice breeders, which are actually in a lot of ways the most important. And we'll talk about this as we're going. And to me, they represent about 14 or 15% of all the breeders.
Mhm.
And they're the future of the breed. We have the master breeders, and if they're doing their job and producing really good animals and hopefully passing the information down, it's actually the apprentices that are going to gather that up and move forward. So they become the most important. And then we lump all the other ones into what we call the 85 percenters.
Mhm.
And we break those into like four different categories. You have the ignorant breeder, and we'll talk about these, all of them one by one, the neglectful breeder, the mixers and the crossers, and the accidental breeders. And the accidental breeders, we also call them the 20 percenters. And they
Mhm.
actually could be the most dangerous out of all of them. So you
Right.
got to watch out for those. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's jump into it. Which kind of breeder you want to jump into first?
We could start with the master breeders and work our way down.
Let's
Uh,
do it.
Well, one thing I do want to say before we get started is it's funny, no matter where you're at in the spectrum, whether you're a master breeder, apprentice, or we lump them into the 85 percenters, they all think they're breeders. They all actually think they're breeding, in this case, dogs. And they
Mhm.
actually feel like with the little information they have or the lifelong education that they've created, that they know what they're doing. And it's amazing how many simply don't understand the process and don't understand why they're not making progress or getting the results they're looking for. Some of them even have their own YouTube channels or podcasts, like we're doing here and the one I have. And they're just giving out a lot of misinformation. They base all their stuff on old wives' tales and superstitions. And what they're doing is they're actually confusing the beginners.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think they're confusing a lot of times apprentices, because apprentices are doing what they need to do. They're following the right people and they're learning what
Right.
to do. But for people who are just getting into it, they're really confusing those beginners and they're getting them off on the wrong track.
True.
If we don't keep them on the right track and progress them properly, you could, whatever breed you're breeding, you could lose them, you know. So I get a little concerned about the kind of people that are out there that think they're breeders but aren't really breeders, using the platforms like the podcast platform and YouTube channels to get their word out, and they're just confusing people. And
Mm-hmm.
those are the ones I worry about,
Right.
But if we go into the master breeders, these are people that really dedicate to the craft. They've devoted their whole lives to perpetuating high quality strains. They want to do it right. They have a better understanding than most when it comes to the breeding process. They understand the breed. They understand the importance of genetics. They know how to select, what to select for, and they're getting the results. They're actually getting the results. They know the importance of good health and disease prevention, and they're actually making sure that their animals get the right nutrition. And they're like the teachers in our field, and they're the ones that we should be paying attention to the most, because they're actually getting the results we're looking for. And like I said, they only represent 1% in our field, of all the breeders out there, which is scary. I wish it was
Yeah.
higher than that.
Yeah. That's true. I was talking to a buddy of mine yesterday, Dion Tuff. He actually did a show here, and he was like, "Man, like the new breeders or what you would call apprentices, we gonna have to calm down and let the older breeders teach us. It's so many people who don't know how to breed, leading off, putting off wrong information. That's one thing inspired me to start this channel. There was a lot of fake news, brother,
Yeah.
and that I had knew enough about. I said, wait a minute, wait a minute, wait a minute, and it wasn't a lot of people to correct it. So
Yeah. Well, we
mhm,
fight that a lot too. And Frank and I, he's my co-host on my show. We have this term called the straight stick theory.
mhm,
Basically, all these people that are passing the misinformation and not really helping people, they're the crooked stick. Okay. And we feel that our information is based, on facts and on science. And we really feel that the information that we're passing is good information. It's going to get them on the right track. So we just keep laying that straight stick alongside their crooked stick, hoping that people will see what we're teaching not only looks right, feels right, but it makes sense. And that maybe what they're talking about doesn't. And then they'll hopefully follow what we're doing and we'll guide them in the right direction.
mhm,
But yeah, I think it's a travesty that when there are such good breeders out there, that a lot of times they want to keep the information they have secret. They don't want to pass it along. They don't want to
mhm.
help anybody. They just want to keep it to themselves. And I just think the true master breeders, which I keep telling you, it's just a small number. Only a small number of them are actually passing the information down to the next generation. We got
Right.
we got to do better than that, Joe.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, especially for the sake of whatever breed you are breeding. I mean, you have to get the information out. And I know some of them probably kind of bewildered by the younger breeders coming in fast, coming in hot, thinking they know everything, argument of click, political, all this stuff. I think everybody just need to sit down and listen to what these guys have to say, especially if we can get them to say it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
So.
I've been watching your show quite a bit since I met you, and I think you're doing a good thing. You're interviewing some really good people,
Mhm,
and they have really good. Some of their perspectives are a little different, but I didn't see very many. I mean, most of the people you interview are actually giving out pretty good information, you
mhm,
know.
mhm,
And I've been watching some other dog shows, and I'm not impressed. And it's funny too. We talk about this, the difference between chickens and dogs, and then the difference between the breeders of chickens and the breeders of dogs. And the things you guys are seeing, as far as there's some good shows out there, some bad shows, there's good information, bad information. We see the same thing in the chicken world, So
Right, right. And we need more resources, especially for the breed I deal with. We need kind of like more resources like what you're doing. And I'm thinking that this show is gonna, I'm getting messages like, I'm coming, I'm coming. And so it's been good.
yeah,
Yeah.
I'm just amazed that the Breeders' Academy, which was meant for chickens, is getting even dog breeders in there.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
like you're finding information that's working for you. I
Right.
think that's awesome.
Yeah.
So
It's a good thing to have more apprentices and not the 85 percenters.
yeah. Well,
Yeah.
like I said, the apprentices are so important. To me, they're the most important. And there's a quite a bit of them. Like I said, there's probably about 15% of all the breeders are what we could call the apprentices. And I do believe they're the future of the breed, because they're the ones going to keep it going. And I even wish that number was a little higher, but I just love their willingness to learn. They have the right attitude. They're very motivated. They're always hungry for information, and you can see who they are by the fact that they're always trying to not only improve themselves but improve their animals. You know,
Right. Right.
so
Mm.
yeah, I think they're very important, and we
Mhm.
should do everything when we see students like that who want to learn, who want to do better, who are trying to do it right. The master breeders should help these guys out as much as they can.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you guys have a lot of gatekeeping in your breeds?
What do you mean?
That means like people that want to hold tight to the information, don't want a lot of people thinking they're going to,
Yep.
reach them.
Yeah, we see that a lot. Matter of fact, well, Frank has seen it more than I have. I got really lucky. I always found, I don't know, it's just my drive, and I excited them or whatever. Or when I got around people, they just enjoyed having me around, like Tony and Doug and a number of others. They were always just quick to help me and give me the right information. But then I had some that I called mentors too that did everything wrong, which
Mhm.
I value, because I could see what they were doing and how they were doing it. And then I would compare it to what I would call from my good breeder mentors and see what they were doing. And I enjoyed the contrast.
Mhm.
Then I started getting the magazines that kind of followed our breed. And I was like, oh my God, there's so many people who are doing it wrong. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
But Frank saw it all the time, that probably more than I did, where people, like you said, were just holding that information tight to their chest. They just wouldn't let it out.
Right.
They would even give poor information to send you off track on purpose.
Mhm.
So I think no matter what, it's dogs, chickens, horses, whatever, I think that's common with all of them. We see that everywhere.
Right. And then of course, on one-on-one mentoring, you can't mentor everybody. And I notice unless you're serious, they're not going to deal with you. You know, I've been a little bit fortunate because a lot of people know, oh, that's to do with the podcast. Yeah, I help. What you need, because I guess that's their way of knowing that I'm serious about it. So I get a little bit more access to things.
Yeah, you bring up a good point there, that even though, let's say you're an apprentice, even though you want to learn, you're motivated and you're trying to do everything right, you need to be a good student too.
Mm.
Because you're right, the master breeders out there that are willing to teach you, if you're a difficult student and you're questioning everything, or you're just being difficult or backstabbing even, they're just not going to deal with you. So you not only have to be a willing apprentice, but you have to be a good apprentice, a good student,
That's right.
So it goes both ways. You have to be a good teacher, but they have to be a good student too,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know.
You got to be a very good listener,
And
and
I listened to, when I found a good teacher, I listened to everything they said. I wrote things down. I went home and wrote everything down that I could remember. I did more. I took what I learned from them. I researched even more. I applied it to my birds. And you said a comment earlier where you can't teach everybody one by one or one on one.
mhm.
And there was a time when I was working with people one on one. And you're right. That's a lot of work. to be a teacher, a master breeder and a teacher,
Mhm.
and you want to help other people, boy, that gets tiring after a while. It actually does. So I understand both sides. And so it got very difficult. So my way of doing it, because people start calling me, they had me on phone for the hours, and I can't tell you how often that happened. And so I started writing for the magazines. I started writing for the magazines around 2002. And there's a story behind it because my daughter actually started writing before me because I didn't want to do it. And
Mhm.
she decided to take it on. But, anyways, when she quit, I took over for her. And it worked out really good because I was able to give information through my writings and what I was learning from my mentors into the magazines. And it really was starting to help people. But, I don't know if that happens to you, Joe, but sometimes those magazines would spawn more people trying to contact you and get the information still. But
Yeah, yeah, it does. What usually happens here? My phone number might get slipped out, my personal cell phone,
oh yeah,
and then I'll have people that might have saw a guest and let me tell you, and want to give me his opinion on what my guest said. But other than that, it does strike up conversations. Like, well, Joe, what about this? What about that? I got some of those questions for you later that people message me
sure.
with. So yeah, so it's cool, and I have to just think about it and figure it out. Got to be quick. I got to be a quick learner because I'm an apprentice. But being that I'm in the forefront of the show, people ask a lot of questions. I got to be able to answer them.
And you
So
will.
yeah.
The more
Hmm.
you do and the more people you talk to and the more people you interview, you're kind of scooping up all that information too. And
That's right.
you find yourself applying it to your breeding process, and
Mhm.
you see that some of it's going to work and some of it's not. And through your show, you're going to be able to pass it on to the next person, uh, the stuff that did work, the stuff that you trust. And I found that too, that the magazines really spurred on, it really helped me get the information out. Then we started doing the podcast. That really got the information out. Now we're doing the live show. And that one-on-one, this is the way me and you are getting to many. So we don't have to do exactly the one-on-one. And then I'm able to help, like you'll find if you ever do it yourself, and I have a feeling you will someday, start like let's say a membership website where you're actually teaching the breeding process to people.
Mhm.
And what's neat about that is, like, I have like 300 members in there right now. Okay.
Mhm.
And it's kind of neat because those people, like they say, the people that are willing to pay are the people that are really going to learn. They're going to actually put it into practice. Okay. They're
Mhm.
not just going to pay their money and sit off to the side. You know that when they pay, they're going to listen. Okay.
Mhm.
And so they get in there and they ask, you can see the motivation in them. You can see the excitement in them. They want to learn everything they can. And so it's kind of fun to see that. And where I am still doing the one-on-one is with the coaching calls on the website. So they come on, they learn something, they have some questions, and then they'll contact me and we'll do some coaching calls. And that's fun. I enjoy that, actually. So
Mhm.
although I'm teaching many through the podcast and the live show, I'm able to get very specific with the ones in the website, which is kind of cool.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
then I know y'all always saying, boy, Joe be pumping up Kenny, but I'm gonna tell you, when you get in that website, it's like being in his brain. And I'm talking about, man, it's so many subjects. You wouldn't think, like, you know, Kenny being a foul breeder, that you could learn some stuff from that world, man. I'm talking about, just he has a doctor on there sometimes. They have really good conversations about, you remember you did the show with me and Lamont, right? And we was talking about coccidia.
Hmm.
And in my mind, coccidia was always something, until I learned later that we got to wipe that out. But we all got coccidia in us. But what that medication, what we use is Albon in the dog world, actually knocks the coccidia down to levels where it's safe for us. And
Yeah.
just little details like that, and it's really something to just go in and try for a couple months, guys. I'm telling you, you're gonna be like, Joe,
Some of the,
appreciate it.
yeah, some of the internal parasites that we have in us, like the coccidia. Coccidiosis is the disease.
Hmm.
Coccidia is the bug. And
Hmm.
things like that. We need a certain amount of that in us. Without it, we would die because any exposure to it would overwhelm us and our immune system would never be able to fight it. And for chickens, worms is part of that too. And everybody thinks they have to get everything. I don't know about dogs. I can't talk to dogs when it comes to parasites and diseases. I don't even want to go there because that's not my forte. You guys are going to know more than that about that than me. But when it comes to chickens, they need a certain amount of worms in them. They need a certain amount of coccidia. They need exposure to some diseases so they can build an immunity to it and build some resistance to it. And everybody thinks they just want to wipe it out, and that's a bad thing. But one of the things you said is I've been very good to not only having mentors that I had, but the experts that are out there. I rarely interview the average breeder because I find that a lot of them really don't have information in the past. They don't really know that much. They're not as experienced as as they think they are. So whenever I have when I do an interview with someone, they're one of the top in their field. They're the best, you know. And so if I'm interviewing somebody, listen to them because they know what they're talking about. And I just love being surrounded by those people because you can never stop learning. I'm still learning. No matter how much everybody thinks I know, I am still learning. And I love it. If I wasn't still learning, I'd get bored. You know?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And then I was talking to somebody about the same thing the other day. Guys, I don't want to talk about, the puppy market all the time. I want to talk about why we put these dogs together. What are we trying to, obtain, things like that, and I think that's the difference in between the 85% and the apprentices, the guys
Well,
that really want to learn the craft.
yeah, and that's important. And the 85 percenters, like I said, when we look at the difference between the master breeders and the apprentices, and then we look at the 85 percenters, you could see from the master breeders and 85, God, I'm messing that up. The master breeders and apprentices, and then we can compare them to the 85 percenters, we can see that the level of knowledge and skills drops so much. It's like night and day. And like I said, these guys, they think they think they're breeders, but they really just don't know as much as they think they know. You can tell they're never trying to really improve. They don't read anything. They're not trying to learn anything. They rarely search out mentors, which I think is important. And instead they're following their friends. They're following the people that are close to them, which usually we always say that you always want to hang around with the 5 people that are the most successful. That you're basically your success is going to be guided by the 5 people you hang around with the most, basically. Okay, and so the better people that you hang around with, the better you're going to get. And if they're hanging around with their friends, chances are the friends don't know any more about it than they do. And so they cling on to those old wives' tales and superstitions. They use guesswork and speculation to guide their path. They don't really follow proven paths, and they definitely don't follow the science. They go by trial and error. They do a lot of experimentations, and I think they do the experimentations because they just simply don't know the science. You know, and that matter of fact, I think they avoid the science completely because I think they look at it as difficult, complicated, and they just they go the easy way. They say, okay, my friends are doing this, so I'm just going to do that. I don't need to know why. I don't need to know the complications of it. I just want to do what they're doing. But they're not learning as they're doing it. And they don't know why they're doing it a lot of times. They just do what everybody else is doing. And then they wonder why they're not getting the results that the master breeders are getting. So
Let me ask you this. And during your learning journey and the mentors you had, were all your mentors pretty similar or were they pretty different?
they're pretty different in a lot of ways. In some ways, they were the same. They basically got the same overall results because they understood the basics. They all understood the basics. Okay. But like Tony Seville, one of my mentors who used to live down the street from me, the guy he was from South Africa. He was an old Oxford judge with the old Oxford game foul judge. What am I thinking? Old Oxford judge with the old English games. Okay. And he understood the form and structure of the bird like I've never seen anybody talk about. As far as the games, the average breeder, since I was a kid, they would talk about station, which is basically length of leg and performance ability. Okay. They would never talk about conformation of body. They didn't understand what that meant. They didn't understand what type means. Matter of fact, still to this day, when you use the word type, they look at you like you just made up a word. They don't realize it's actually a thing, you know. And they didn't really care about color, but Tony was able to teach me the structure, the form, function, and overall structure of the bird, and why it mattered, and why it was a big deal, which really opened my eyes. And that really is what got me started with the writing part of it, because Tony didn't want to do it, and I just felt like everything was Tony was teaching me. People need to know this stuff, you know. And I had a lot of resistance. There was a lot of people that had a problem with what I was teaching because it was just against everything that they thought or what they learned or what they knew. And because it made them be better than they were, they just went crazy. They almost lose their temper. I had people even threaten me. You know, it was the weirdest thing you ever saw. And so I just stuck with my guns. I said, nope, this is the right thing. I'm just going to teach it, and some are going to get it, and some aren't, and that's just the way it is. You know. But Tony taught structure. Doug was really good about genetics, the law of inheritance. He really opened my eyes to that part. And I haven't talked to Doug in a long time, but now I'm working with Brian Reeder, who has a level of genetics that even, I hate to say it, supersedes, is much higher than what I was learning from Doug. And he really goes in deep into the color and how to preserve the colors, create the colors, you know, pass the colors from generation to generation, how to improve the colors. I've always had a really good understanding of basic genetics. And what I call basic genetics is not what most people think. Most people, when you talk about genetics, they're thinking, you know, monogenic traits like dominant recessive, the simple ones. They might even go a little bit into sex linkage. But they don't even realize what sex linkage is, that they're the genes that are on the sex chromosomes. They don't understand how that works. They think they know, but they don't. They only information they do know, or what they think they know, is dominant recessive. But the biggest part of it, which everybody misses, you could pick up any book in the store, at a feed store. I've even seen it with the dog breeders, is they miss the importance of polygenic traits, multi-gene traits, quantitative traits. You know, polygenic traits just means that there's more than one gene determining what happens with a trait, okay, or determines how a trait is created. And then being that it's quantitative just means they're measurable. And if we know what direction to select, which intensity to select for, we can improve it over time. But if we breed to the wrong animal, the wrong mate, then we can lose that trait overnight. And a lot of times the polygenic traits is not something you can just look at the phenotype of the animal and determine. Conformation is one of them, but most of the polygenic traits that we need is the temperament of the animal, the behaviors in the animal, the performance ability of the animal, those kind of things are really important stuff, you know. But Brian Reeder's teaching me a lot about the color, but what Doug taught me was more about the overall understanding, the basics of genetics, which really made the difference. And then after talking with Doug and learning what I did, then I just went deep into the books and just learned so much more, and then applied to the way I bred my fowl. Now I'm teaching it, you know.
Right. And sometimes somebody just breaking down stuff to you, and because I'm one of those people, you have to look, Joe, blase, 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 and then I can run with it. You know what I mean? I'm just one of those people, very hands on. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, that's a good thing about, and I think now that you're doing it live, and I hope you do more lives. I like the energy of the lives better. You're going to get questions from the gallery, and I hope they do send in their questions.
Yeah, send in questions, guys.
Yeah, those questions are going to not only help you or help them, but they're going to help you, because if you have an idea, the kind of things people need, you know, maybe you don't know the answer. You just say, okay, that's something I have to look into, and then you study it. You go in there and you check it out and you learn it. Then you can help other people. So yeah, I find that the live show really does help. I enjoy the questions, because yeah, it shows me where everybody's at and what they need to learn. You know.
Yeah, and I'm not I'm more comfortable because Kenny, we done did a few shows together, so I'm
Yeah.
really comfortable. You know, we done had conversations, plenty of them now. So yeah, so I'm
Well, I was
more,
telling
way
you that
more like, yeah.
today. Well, I was telling you that today that we were really pleased when you came on to do the show with us on my show.
Hmm.
You were so relaxed.
Oh yeah,
That was really good. Like
yeah.
I was like, okay, cool. And you the more shows you do, the more relaxed you're gonna get.
Oh yeah,
You
yeah,
know,
yeah,
I
for sure.
it's like I'm not gonna say I don't think about the people watching the show. Like I have no idea how many's watching it right now. We could have anywhere from 50 to 100 on our show, and then all the people afterwards for the reruns. Then that's
Hmm.
when the most people come in. But I don't dwell on that. I don't think about that too much. I just know that I have a question in front of me. I have a topic that I want to teach, and I focus on that.
That's right.
And I'm not one of those kind of people. I'm just not good at it. Where some people they can get in front of the camera and they can be all by themselves and they're talking to themselves the whole time and maybe responding to some of the comments in there.
Yeah,
I like what we're doing here. We're having a
uh-huh.
conversation, and to me that's
Yeah.
fun. With my show, I have my wife who's really good at making sure that we're answering the questions, because we can be vague. It's like what do they call it, the curse of knowledge. It's like we're talking about something, we kind of assume everybody's on the page we are,
Hmm.
understanding what we're saying, and then Nancy will come in and go, hey, wait, we need to clear this up because some people are not understanding it, and she'll make sure that we're clear and that we're saying things so that everybody understands it. But I really enjoy that conversation setting where Frank, me, and my wife are just chatting, you
Hmm.
know
Hmm.
and so I enjoy that's what I was telling you when we came on here, that
That's right. Yeah.
I could sit here and I could teach all this stuff, but I would rather have a conversation, tell you the truth.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
you were
Hmm.
really good with that. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Don't let me throw you off subject though, because I will.
No, hey, even if I don't stay online on the topic here, I
Yeah,
think we're talking about things that people are going to get
that's true.
something out of.
That's
That's the
true.
main
Yeah. Yeah.
thing. So,
Yeah.
but if you want to get back on topic here, we're back to the 85 percenters, and like I said, I think they avoid the science of breeding
Hmm.
because they feel like it's complicated or difficult. And I always encourage everybody, so that you're not one of the 85 percenters, is learn a little bit about evolutionary biology, especially when it comes to how it relates to breeding. You would be surprised of how much if you look at the mechanisms of evolution, how closely they are to the mechanisms of selective breeding. And if you can understand why Mother Nature does what it does, and you stay as close to Mother Nature as possible, you're going to see huge results in your fowl, because you're not fighting the genetics. You're not getting behind the genetics, and you're not fighting the genetics. You're going with the way it should work. Okay. And so I'm always really good at, you know, studying evolutionary biology, sticking with the mechanisms of evolution and just looking for the similarities when it comes to selective breeding. And then try to learn as much as you can about genetics and the law of inheritance. And I think this is where I excel, because
Hmm.
I learned early on that, even though, and Doug helped me with this too, because when he taught me genetics, he taught me in a way that I could learn, that I could grasp it. Because whenever he kind of felt like I was losing me, I'd say, Doug, I'm not really sure where you're going with that. And he goes, well, let me say it this way. So then when I studied it and dug into the books, and I started finding the genetics that really matter, the ones that are going to make the biggest difference, the ones that we could use practically, that when I dug into them, they were complicated. They were just the way they were worded. So I found a way to really dig in deep, find the information I need, and then simplify it. And I would say anybody who wants to be a teacher, it's not about just giving the information, but simplifying in a way that people can understand and use it. And that's what I was really good at. And I think that's why the Breeders' Academy is so darn successful, and why people like it, because I give it to them in a way they can understand it and use it.
Hmm.
And I think that's important, you know. And then like I said, understanding the real process of breeding, the processes and the art and science of selective breeding. Understand your breed, understand the selection process, understanding what traits to select, which ones to select and move forward with, which ones to cull, understand the breeding methods that are out there, understand that the breeding method is only a method, that you have to understand the breeding programs, which are methods, many methods within one program, used in the right order at the right time for the right length of time. And if you see a program that doesn't have that, then it's probably not a proper breeding program. And then I encourage everybody to just try to keep as much as far as breeding records as possible. And everybody goes, well, how do I do that? Well, the only thing you need to remember is what you want to record is the things you want to remember, compare, or measure. And then you can create your record forms or your record books the way you want, as long as you're covering those things. What do you want to remember? What do you want to compare? And what do you want to measure? Okay, well, that's all that's important. And then for us with chickens, we have to tag all our birds with numbers, so we know who's who and where they came from and who the parents are and what have you. You know, and you guys do a lot of that through pedigree. Yeah, which is good.
Let me ask you, do you want to knock out a question or do you want to wait to the end?
We can cover some questions right now.
Okay. I'm gonna let him get his question off, but I did have a question for you as well. Once there is an established family of a bloodline, is there any point of bringing in a fresh line or need to outcross?
I'm always okay with telling the first part of the founders program, which is my breeding program. Okay, whenever you're bringing in new blood, you're basically starting over, and we call for chickens, and it would be the same thing with you guys. Is the animals, the chickens that I start with, the male and the female, those are our Adam and Eve. Okay, those are our seed fowl. Those are the ones that are going to get the strain started, and then we run them through a process there. So anytime you feel like you need to outcross because you just feel like the genes aren't there, you feel like you need more, then it's all going to happen in the beginning of the program. You're not really going to get deep into the program until you stop the flow of genes. Evolution, gene flow. The only time you can start actually moving forward is when you stop adding new blood, because you never know what you got. Every time you do, you're starting over. Outcrossing, especially when you have an established family, anytime you outcross or bring in new blood or infuse new blood, you're recombinating the genes. And we're going back to science a little bit here. And here's how you know it. Because a lot of people think they can add new blood and get the benefits of that blood and then breed it back out, using that blood to improve yours and then breeding it back out. And we know through meiosis and the crossover event that it doesn't work. All we have to look at is Mendel's second law of inheritance, which is independent assortment of genes, which basically shows us how meiosis works. I don't want to get into the whole process of meiosis. That's a show in itself. But you got meiosis, which creates gametes, which are unique. And anytime you bring in new blood, you recombinate the genes. And then how they line up on the chromosome is how they were aligned on when they went through the crossover event. And that'll determine whether they go to the next generation, which they're correlated, how close they are to each other on the chromosome. Are they on separate chromosomes? Are they really far from each other? That kind of thing. I'm trying to be careful not to go too deep because I can go into the woods on that one. But what I'm trying to say is, if you understand meiosis and the recombinating the genes and gene linkage, you understand that the idea of outcrossing or infusing new blood into an established family is like the worst thing you can ever do, because you've changed them forever completely. Even though in many ways they look the same, they're not. Genetically, they're not. They're completely different. So I would say if you have an established line and you feel like you need to do something like that, then we encourage in the Breeders' Academy is to do a subline. So basically, you have your foundation line and you do a separate line off to the side that doesn't even touch the foundation line. Okay. You do all your experimentations, you do all those kind of infusions with your subline, and you run them through the founders program just like you would in the regular foundation. So that'll tell you whether you're going in the right direction or wrong direction. If it works out great. But when you mess with the foundation line right off the bat like that, and you're wrong, you screwed them up. You just lost a lot of years, a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of money, So any kind of experimentations, any type of outcrossing, infusion, anything like that should always be done on a separate line that doesn't even touch the foundation.
Gotcha. And then, I was reading something the other day in the academy that Mother Nature inbreeds and line breed naturally. They
Yeah,
just
if you look at
yeah.
a pack of wolves, they're all related basically.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you got the brother, you've got the was it the alpha male? He's
Alpha,
breeding
yep.
to his mother, his aunts, his sisters, his cousins, his daughters a lot of times. And so there's all kinds of mating going on there. You know, you've got line breeding going on there, you've got inbreeding going on there. If maybe some outcrossing, if I don't know how it works with the wolves, but if I guess if you lose your alpha male, there's going to be some competition. Maybe one comes from the outside. I guess that could happen if all the males were gone for some reason. Then you got outcrossing, and then you'd have hybridization. And yeah, so it all works. You know, it weeds itself out because Mother Nature, they all can handle a certain amount of inbreeding. I don't care what animal it is. It's when you do it over and over again. And the good thing about inbreeding depression is it's not inheritable. So the animals that are suffering from inbreeding depression, even if they bred, they wouldn't pass that to the next generation. A lot of times Mother Nature weeds them out so they don't end up breeding anyways. And so we have to act like Mother Nature, and we have to cull the inferior animals.
Right,
You
right,
know, we have to control the direction of our strain, you know?
right, right. Doug, he says, I'm afraid my questions could go too deep. I breed fishes and I deal with dogs, but not currently. Well, that's why you got to come in the academy, Doug.
You know, it's funny. Well, I mean, we have chicken breeders, but we have fish breeders. I have a
Hmm.
guppy breeder, okay, and
Hmm.
we have dog breeders now too. So,
Right, right. This is my question. Um, the 85 percenters. This is my question, maybe observation. I notice that I talk to certain people that they don't, like you said, they don't want to learn. They don't really give a damn. You know what I mean? And it's more about what people call a backyard breeder, or I think in your word y'all call them peddlers.
well, okay,
So I think it's people who want to remain in the 85%. They don't actually give a shit about learning to better the breed and things like that. What do you think about that? Do y'all have those guys?
oh yeah, they're really bad because they're only in it for the money. They're not really producing high quality animals,
Hmm.
and they're passing them to people who think that the animals are good. I do tell. I don't know about the dog world exactly, but I do tell the chicken world that you can find if you understand what you're looking for, you understand the breed, you understand what represents their breed, having the right conformation of body type, all the characteristics that are important, that a lot of times you can find the right birds in a peddler's yard. You can find bad birds, but you can find good birds. You just got to know what to look for because the way the founders program set up, that you can start a family with unrelated animals. If they represent their breed, have what they need, you can move forward with them. You can go, you know, do what you need to do. They don't have to be pure, and they don't have to be um, they don't have to be a already family. We can start with what you can get and then move on from there. There's a lot hidden within the genome that you can work with. The variations will pop up, and you either call them or take advantage of them. But the way I break down the 85 percenters, which would include what you're talking about, is like I said, we call them the ignorant breeder, the neglectful breeder, the mixers, the crossers, and the accidental breeders. So let's kind of go into those a little bit.
Okay.
So let me move this down here so I'm staying on track. The first one is the ignorant breeder. Okay. They breed, but they don't take the time to learn the basics. Okay. Such as genetics and the law of inheritance, proper selection, breeding methods, the importance of breeding programs, and record keeping. Okay. They don't understand the breed, so they don't understand the structure and the makeup of the breed. And so they're not going to know which traits are important, which traits to select for, which traits to cull. And they have it's like they have a general idea of the breed, but they're unaware. And sometimes they do know the conformation and the type and the color they should be, but for instance, they don't really understand the defects.
Right.
A lot of animals, different breeds, different strains, they have what we call the common defects. Some of them you just need to watch for. If it's a certain type of dog, there's certain defects you have to watch for, and you have to call them when you see them. So in short, they just don't understand the breed well enough to improve them.
Okay.
Okay. And so they get frustrated. They don't get the results they're looking for. So they end up turning into what we call the crossbreeders, because they get frustrated. They're not getting what they want. And they think the only way to fix it, or the only way to move forward, is actually cross them to another animal, not knowing that whenever you cross something, although the offspring do look better in some ways, that's just hybrid vigor. And hybrid vigor is not inheritable. It's a one-time deal. It only shows up in that offspring, and that offspring cannot pass it to the next generation. So it gives the breeder a false, how do you say it? I'm trying to think of the word.
False advertising.
Well, it gives them a false indication of where they really are.
What they really are, yeah.
Yeah.
But, and for the dog breeders out there, that means, like, say you go get a dog that's really crossed up and they look good. I got one right now with 1% COI, and I know what to do to fix that, but he looks great. But that puppy you bought that you think you're going to breed, he's not going to be able to reproduce himself.
No.
Is what we're saying.
Yeah. The traits that hybrid vigor just doesn't reproduce itself, and the traits that we look for the most, like prepotency, good mitochondrial DNA, good polygenic inheritance, those good polygenic intensities, actually, those are passed when the more inbred the family is. The more closely bred they are, the more they're able to pass those kind of traits. And you see them not only in the offspring, but then those offspring can pass it to the next generation. Hybrid vigor it messes up more people, because they think that they see their animals going in a bad direction. They outcross or cross them completely. So you got what, Cane Corsos?
Cane Corsos, yes,
Okay.
sir.
So you see a decline in your animals all of a sudden. And a lot of times that decline isn't exactly inbreeding depression like they think it is. A lot of times it's poor selection. You're just not selecting them properly. You're not mating them properly. So you see a decline in your animals and you say, okay, this person over here has the same dogs that I breed. I'm going to breed his dogs into mine and improve them. Yeah, you do see a bump in the offspring and they do look better, but that's just hybrid vigor. And then you breed them again and you didn't see the results you saw the last time. So the best way to do it is to not do the outcross, not cross them to other people's animals. Try to keep the family contained as much as possible. And there's ways we can show you how to do that within the Founders Program at the Breeders' Academy. I don't want to talk about that here, but there is a way to keep a family very close without suffering the effects of inbreeding depression and all the things you guys are worried about. There's some safeguards within the program that'll help you keep you from running into the problems that you guys are worried about, actually. And I wish I could give it to you here, but that's what we teach at the Breeders' Academy.
That's right. Let me slide a question in for last show. Somebody wants you to read, maybe just go a little bit deeper on the subject when I was on your show. And it says, if the female is responsible for mitochondrial DNA, what does the male bring to the table?
Well, without him, she can't produce offspring, for one thing.
Yes.
Okay. The second thing is prepotency is normally a male thing. We see this all across the board with farm animals, domesticated animals, even chickens. Prepotency means that he's not going to like improve he's not going to give them genetics that they didn't already have, that kind of thing. But it does improve the quality of the animal, similar to what we see with mitochondrial DNA. Okay. Mitochondrial DNA is really cool because although it's a female thing, she does pass that to both her sons and her daughters, but it's the female side that can only pass it from generation to generation. And what that is in control of is the overall health of the strain, the growth and development, resistance to disease, all the kind of things that need to happen for the offspring to reach their full potential. And the only time the female has better prepotency is when you're breeding her to a really inferior male. Then not only does she have the mitochondrial DNA, hopefully, but now she has a prepotency too. But if you're breeding to a really good male with good qualities, and you have a really strong, healthy female with good mitochondrial DNA, then we can assume that he's passing his prepotency to his offspring, his quality to the offspring. See what I mean? Does that make sense?
Yeah, makes more
Okay,
sense.
good.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they're both important. A lot of people ask me who's important, who's more important. Well, for like us in the chicken world, we do place more importance on the hen. We can do more with a hen heading a line than sometimes we can do a rooster. Okay. So we say that she's the matriarch of the family. Without her and having a good hen with good mitochondrial DNA and having all the traits that she needs to have for her breed, you have nothing. And we can breed a really good hen to a poor rooster and still get some pretty decent offspring, you know. But if I breed a really good rooster to a poor hen, I never remember, and I don't know anybody who has gotten good offspring. It's like the hen can make up, the female can make up for the male, but the male rarely makes up for the female. So we try to look, when people say who's better, well, my first indication or my first response would be always the female, but you need them both. You just do. You need them both. You need good animals on both sides.
Right. So
So,
where you want to go next with this? Did you
I guess a neglectful
the
breeder.
neglectful? Yeah.
Yeah. These are interesting because they'll concentrate like on one trait that everybody says important, but they tend to excuse or dismiss or forget about or don't pay enough attention to the other ones that are actually really important. So they ignore, they allow sometimes even serious defects because they feel that this other trait is really important. Okay. And then they allow really harmful and detrimental traits to sneak on through because they didn't either know what to select or they just put so much importance on one trait and forget about the rest. So we call those neglectful breeder. I'm sure you guys see these all the time.
Oh yeah. I mean, because it is silly to try to fix one thing or a couple things on a dog without looking at the overall. That you're gonna mess something up. You know what I mean?
That's why I tell the people I'm working with is do the best you can to look for the complete package. Okay. Now it's easier for us with chickens because we can hatch a lot of chicks. And I always tell my breeders, hatch as many as you can manage and afford. And that in some ways applies to you guys too. That way you have a really good selection. Okay. And so the more animals you have to select from, and we say, okay, I know this in some ways ain't going to apply to you guys, but let's say you hatch 100 chicks. Okay. And we always say, okay, we want to weed them down to the top 10%. Okay. And then now the top 10%, somewhere there are going to be the standouts. And it's always the standouts that are going to move the strain forward. Okay. So, and those standouts represent everything you're looking for when it comes to the breed. So I always tell people the ones you actually breed for should have the complete package. They should have the right temperament, right performance ability, right type, conformation, color, right behaviors, everything as much as possible, as close as possible, because a lot of those are polygenic traits and they can be improved over time. So even though they're not perfect, most of the traits can be improved over time through selection.
Okay. So this is a question for you.
Mhm.
So with puppies, when we're trying to hold back one or however, 6.5 weeks, 7.5 week is when we really hone in on them. And some breeders it might be 3-4 months in the line, but for the majority, I believe it's 6.5, 7.5 weeks where we picking the one we hoping to that's gonna he's somebody's gonna be a little different. He's gonna have something that makes us keep him. But when is that time for you guys?
Yeah. Good question. I was just thinking about that when you said that, because at 7-8 weeks, that's that's pretty young. I mean, so if you have a family you know really well, maybe at 7-8 weeks, you can tell by that age what kind of puppy, what kind of dog that puppy is going to turn out. I can look at one of my young roosters, one of my young pullets, because I've had this family for over 30 years, that I have a pretty good idea how they're going to turn out. So I'm basically looking just for defects that might show up. So as far as chickens, it's like the biggest spurt of growth is going to be from the time the chick hatches to 6 months old. We see the biggest growth and development there. Okay, then they're going to grow and develop a little more between 6 months and a year, but we still see growth and development and maturity from a year to 2 years, 2 years old. So if you know the family, then you probably, I'm talking about chickens now. If you know the family real well and understand how they grow and develop, and you can pretty much dictate what you're going to get, then you can probably do a lot of your selection between 6 months and a year. If you don't know the family very well, then for chickens, I would wait till they're at least a year old, and then hold on to some of them, and then do your final selection when they're at least 18 months or 24 months old.
Well,
Then,
I guess it kind of works with us too. We eliminate any puppies we see. Okay, they don't have it. You know, I guess it's the same way y'all do
yeah.
it, and because a dog can kind of fall apart as he gets older, and then he might have to go out. We might have to cull him. And somebody's asking about that. Let me show this. How hard is it to get rid of your culls in the dog world?
Yeah. Well, you tell me. I know.
Okay.
I think that's your biggest challenge is what to do with your coals. You know, for us chickens, we just eat them. You know,
Right. Yeah.
if we don't like them, we can process them and eat them.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. That's true. Yeah. So it's definitely very hard sometimes, but because getting rid of a grown dog is harder. But just because that dog doesn't make it in your program, he might can fit in somebody else's program. Because you just can't. You got to keep the best, and it
yeah,
might be the best on his yard for him.
exactly. And we say that in the Breeders' Academy too, that basically when you're doing your breeding, you're obviously going to cull all the defective birds and the sick birds. Okay. You are keeping the top 10%, and you're selecting from the standouts there. All the ones in between are usually pretty good birds. Once you've culled out the obvious defects and the sick birds, the ones in the middle are actually pretty decent. Are they your best? No, but they're good enough to get other people started.
That's right. That's
Okay.
right.
If you
Yeah.
feel good enough about that you're not passing birds that are way off the standard, that are just so substandard, it's not even funny. They don't even come close to representing their breed. That's a different thing. And then even some of those can be given to people who aren't planning on breeding them. You know, they're not planning on taking them to the next breed to or take to the next generation. And so maybe you can find homes from
Yeah.
them. But so I think it's the same.
Yeah, it is the same because you just hit on a point I was about to make. Give them away,
Give them away.
fix them, and give them away to people who may need them. You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
You may not make money on them,
No.
but understand this: the better the strain gets, the better the quality of the offspring, the less culling you're going to have to do. So yeah, in the beginning, it's kind of rough and it's kind of difficult. You're going to see more culls. You're going to see some that you wouldn't breed to, but as they get better and as the strain progresses, you're going to see less culls, or just the standard overall. The family's just going to get better, and you're going to. That's why I think you see this with what we call the master breeders. The animals they're producing, for the most part, are actually pretty good overall. You don't see a lot of culls. You don't see a lot of defects. They're not far from the standard because they've really intensified those genes, and they've inbred that family enough to be able to reproduce themselves. And same thing with chickens. It doesn't change.
Right. Right. The mixer and crossbreeder.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we were talking about it earlier when we were
Yep.
talking about peddlers. This is the peddlers right here.
Mhm.
Okay. They have no interest in creating a strain, improving a strain, maintaining a strain. They're all about trying to produce as many birds. They know that if they cross them, they're going to get that hybrid vigor, and the offspring they're going to produce are going to be looking really good. They could care less what happens to them once they're out of their hands. And a lot of times the people who buy them, because they are dealing with hybrids or mongrels, the offspring they produce off those aren't going to be that good. And they're not going to know it for 2 or 3, sometimes 4 years down the road, which now the breeder you got them from is well disconnected. And these people just think they did something wrong. So they kind of, they do a lot of that. They're crossing animals. They're doing a lot of outcrossing. They're doing a lot of infusion. but they're also the ones that are following when they're trying to teach people. You hear it all the time. You can tell them from a mile away. They're teaching the superstitions and the old wives' tales, and they're also the ones in a lot of ways they either believe that there's no such thing as pure, or they tell people they are because that there aren't, because they don't want to go through the process of doing it themselves, because they know how much work it is. But you know, they also don't put a lot of preference between the difference between quality and quantity. They're more about the quantity, and they hardly call anything because they feel like everything they produce is worth something. They're going to make money on
Right.
something.
Yeah.
And if you're not a high on the totem pole as far as their friends or people they want to impress, you're probably not going to get their good stuff. You're going to get the stuff they should have culled a long time ago. But
Right.
another thing you see too with these mixers and crossers is they usually have a master breeder usually has one breed, maybe two, maybe three at the most. Okay. But these mixers and crossers, they have, like for chickens, they could have 10, 15, 20 different breeds on one yard. Or they say they do.
That's a lot to keep up with, especially if you breed to a standard. That's a lot to keep up
I
with.
don't think they are. I just think they're
Yeah.
crossing things, and if it looks
Right.
like this breed, they call it that breed. If it looks like
Right.
that breed, they call it that breed. They slap names on them. And we have a thing we talk about in the Breeders' Academy, or even on my show. We call it the name game, because a lot of these names that people are clinging to. I don't know if this is happening in the dog world.
Oh, boy,
but
yeah.
no, you're going to tell me. I want to hear about it. Okay. But in the chicken world, these are names that were slapped on these birds sometimes 50 or 100 years ago. And people are always crossing them and adding new blood, but they still attach these names to them. And if they think they breed like a hat, or what they call a Kelso, and they breed together, then they use the percentage game, saying, "Oh, he's half hatch, half Kelso. Oh no, this is 3/4 round heads, quarter sweater." And they think those things mean something, but they don't, because the names don't even mean anything. How can the percentages mean something when the names don't mean anything? It's a game that they all play. A lot of people know it doesn't exist. The people they're talking to know it doesn't exist. They know it exists. The other people know it doesn't know. I mean, they know it doesn't exist, but they still play the game with each other. It just makes me scratch my head. Like, what are you guys doing? You guys are talking nonsense. None of that means anything. So tell me your side. I want to hear about it.
So in our world, it's a couple things. We got champion bloodlines. Dog ain't been a champion since Kunta Kinte owned the dog. and then you have it's been so much in between there. You know what I mean? And just because it's dog, and then we got famous breeders. They try to clinch on to their names. Oh, this is such and such line, such and such line, and you read all up their pedigree. Well, such and such line was in there too, and this kind of line, and you didn't really know that was a skittish line, and you didn't know that line was epileptic, and
Yeah.
So yeah, they play that champion line shit. Really, like, man, come on, man.
I think
You ain't made no champion.
Yeah. There's
Yeah.
some big time breeders, well-known breeders. They sell a lot of birds. It just bewilders me that I don't want to use their name. I don't want to say what their names are, but they're well known enough, and they should, if their family is pure enough, they should call them. I don't know why. They're big enough names. They should be calling them their name, not the old names that doesn't exist anymore. I just don't understand that. I got away from that a long time ago. I got my birds originally from a breeder. His name was Colonel Givens. Okay. And when I asked Colonel Givens where he got him, he said from a breeder named Harold Brown. Okay. He didn't even call him Colonel Givens. He just said these are old Harold Brown blood. And so when I got him, I called him Colonel Givens for a little while, but I noticed they were getting better. They were changing. They were so much different. Every time I saw someone with Colonel Givens birds, they were nothing like mine. So I just started calling them my own. I called them the Maximus line. And for the longest time, I did get some flack. Like, oh, what the hell is a Maximus line? What are you talking about? What are those? And I just said, they're my line. And for a while, I did get some flack from it. It took a while for it to take on, to grasp, for people to grasp it. And now people there's no question. They know when they hear the Maximus line, they know exactly what it's from. It took some time to stick with it, you know. But yeah, it was tough at first, but I just couldn't do it anymore because they just weren't
Right.
the same.
Because sooner or later, they your bird. After all the selection you do, they your birds. You can't, you have to make a
Anytime
name
you
for
add
yourself.
new blood, they're now your birds. They're no longer that breeder's birds. Once you add, or even the dogs, if you buy dogs, once you add new blood to it, they are now yours.
That's
After a
right.
few generations, you start seeing change, you know, they're now yours. You know, a good breeder, let's say I take, like in the chicken world, if I take, let's say, half a dozen, or just make it easy, a dozen good breeders who raise a particular breed. And let's say they have them in the show, they have all their birds in different cages, and they're all the same breed. They all represent their breed really well. But because they're such good breeders, not only did they stay close to the standard, they didn't go off the standard, they didn't change the breed. But if you look at each one of the birds, they're uniquely different in very subtle ways because that breeder not only stayed with the breed, but he enhanced the things that made him unique within the breed. And that's something I think the dog breeders can do too. They can stay within the breed, but make them, you've seen it. You see two dogs from the same breed, and one just stands out. You know what I mean? Okay. That's selection right there.
That
That's
is, yeah.
selection. Yeah.
Yeah. Dog, a lot of dog breeders got the misconception that just because you breed a dog to a standard that it loses what he's designed to do. You know what I mean? And that's so far from
No,
the
I think a
truth.
good breeder, it's his responsibility is to breed to the standard that that dog belongs to. Okay. And then he can improve them. You know, I don't know dogs very well, but like chickens, there's certain things like my birds, they have a certain look about them. They look regal. People have told me they look like thoroughbreds. You know, they have this little ring around the eye. I know standard doesn't say anything about a ring around the eye, but I bred towards that. And so it makes it stand out over others, you know, that kind of thing. So you could just see it when a breeder knows what the heck he's doing and he's been working on these animals for a while, he stays very close to the standard and they just look better.
Can there be different types in the same standard? I know you talk about the ring in the eye. Does that make sense?
Well, it depends because when I think of type, I think of the overall formation of the chicken.
Right.
When we say type, if you look at all the different chickens in the world, if you were to black them all out, make a silhouette out of them, and then compare them, they all have a different shape to them. Okay,
Right.
different outline. That kind of shows us without looking at the color of the bird or anything like that. We know from the outline of the bird what breed they are. So that's what I think of type. Is that what you're talking
Right.
about?
Well, sort of. Like we have in the Corso world, we have some we call them hyper type, and then some people call them traditional type. And then even when like it's a Borbal. Borbal has a bigger type and he has a smaller type. But I think what I'm asking is if I wish I knew chickens and maybe I could explain it better. But how far of variation within a breed is acceptable? Does the head always look exactly alike, or is it any variation can be in
If
the
you can look
animal?
Yeah, if you can look at that, if you like, we look at the standard. Here's
Okay.
our standard here. Okay. If I take my breed and I look at how my breed is listed in the standard, and I look at the different parts of the breed, and I look at the different things like the beak, the head, the eye, the body, the wings, the tail, okay, and my birds match what the standard says, then for the most part, I should be good.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Will it look a little different from between different animals of the same breed? It could,
That's
you
okay.
know?
That's what I'm
Yeah,
asking. Yeah.
yeah,
Gotcha.
it
Okay.
could. Yeah. So
Right.
that's what I would say.
Right. Let me ask this question, Vicente Moore. So, at what point is the bloodline new, or do you want to, Vicente? Are you asking, or is the question should be at what point is the bloodline pure? What do you think, Kenny?
Okay. New is as soon as you, well, okay. New is a really interesting word because once you change them, they're not new, they're just different. Okay.
Right.
Uh,
Oh, hey, Kenny, let me cut you off 1 second.
okay.
After that, he's asking, how many generations does it take?
Okay. It depends on the quality of the animals you're starting with. That's the honest truth. If you're starting with really good animals right from the bat, I would say let me use chickens, and then you guys can determine from there what happens with dogs. Um, if you have really good bloodline right from the start, and you're trying to make them your own strain, because they are going to change under your guidance because your selection is going to be different. I would say minimum 6 years. If they have really poor quality, you're starting with birds with a lot of faults, have a lot of issues, but yet the genes are there. You're just having to look for the variations that work in your favor and select towards them. It could take between 10 and 15 years, depending. If you saw the birds I started with, my so-called Colonel Gibbons, I didn't know at that time when I first started. Like I said, I've had them like 30 years. They were awful. They were so bad, but I never added outside blood, and I just worked with what they were showing me. I worked them through the founders program. And today there's some of the best birds out there now.
Wow.
You know,
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
really stand out, but it took a good 10 years to get them where people are going, wow. And 15 years, after 15 years, they still changed quite a bit, and the improvements I'm making now are very subtle, but they are still improving,
Mm,
So that's a hard question to answer because it really depends on the animals he's starting with, you
right.
know.
Yeah.
But as far as what constitutes pure is if I'm seeing uniformity in the offspring, consistency every generation, and yeah, then to me they're pure. If they're able and they're able to repeat themselves each generation, that's pure to me.
Oh, good point, Kenny. Yeah.
Yeah.
Good point. Yeah.
Uniformity, consistency, and repeatability. That's what determines purity of blood.
Mm, okay.
Is anything really pure? We can only go by, all we can do is strive for perfection and try to get as close to it as possible. Whenever we get close to perfection, it moves away from us. It keeps moving away from us. So all we can do is strive for perfection. And what we get at the end is excellence. But we'll never stop breeding. We'll never stop improving them. As good as my birds out there and everybody goes crazy over them, I can still improve them. I'll never be done. And even when you think you got there, it's a balancing act because the genes are always going to fight you and push you and pull you, and they want to go one direction then the next, and you're doing everything you can to keep the animals where they are. So if you see one that's small, I don't know, I'm trying to think of a trait. What's a main trait they look for? Well, let me use chickens and you guys can determine.
Okay.
So if I start seeing lower station and the conformation starting to go bad, then I would cull that bird. If I see over here on the other side, the birds are starting to get a little too tall, then I'd get rid of those. I'm always looking for the ones that are the best, that have stay with the stand, that are close to the standard as possible, I guess you could say. And I'm always just little by here, just little by little, getting rid of the bad ones, staying to the good ones, looking for the variations that work in my favor, the ones I like, and breed to those, exaggerate the ones I really want to incorporate into my family, always weeding out the ones that are a little off or sometimes a lot off. But even when you think you got them where you want them, you still need to select them. You're never done. You're just never done.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Kenny, what are accidental breeders?
We call them the 20 percenters, and they can actually be the most dangerous.
Really?
Yeah,
Okay.
because these are the people that they want the animals for pets. They don't really plan on being breeders. They're not really planning on breeding them or something like that, but yet they somehow produce animals. And sometimes those animals can be so close to the breed, but yet have something in there they shouldn't have, or been bred to the wrong animal. And they find their way sometimes into the population or into the breeding, uh, it, into the hands of someone who breeds them, thinking, "Oh, wow, that animal looks just like mine, or is the same breed. There's something about it. I like it. I'm going to breed it to it." So those
Mhm.
accidental animals seem to find their way. into the hands of good breeders that tend to ruin the breed overall. And this doesn't happen a lot, but all it takes is one to get out there and can do some damage. So I wouldn't say it's like a huge problem, but it can be the most devastating. And we see this with chickens all the time. Yeah. So
you say that many believe are breeders, but don't know the first thing about breeding. And you touched on that before. What can how do I put this? What is your advice if somebody's first coming out, wanting to learn how to breed? What is the first resource? But before you even talk about the Breeders Academy, what should they look into, especially if they're for chickens, to learn more about what they're going to get into?
Well, they got to learn the breed. They got to they got to learn as much as they can about the breed that they're raising, what makes up the breed, the selection of the breed. They have to kind of get an idea where they've came from, the origins of the breed. If they've been breeding for a while, they have to keep track of their ancestry. And if they want to get into breeding, they really got to embrace the science. They really do. You know, they gotta dig in and understand. Now, I know this is the hard part, and this is maybe where I come into play, because I got all kinds of, whenever we see a new chicken book on the shelf, we call them the modern chicken books, we'll grab them, because we want to kind of get an idea what people are putting out there and what people are learning from these books. And then I have all these shelves. You can't see them over here, but I got one over here, one over here, I got here, and I got one there, and I got a bunch up over there. And a lot of those are what we call either college textbooks, sometimes even high school books, but a lot of them what we call old dead man books. And they still are so relevant today. And it's probably where you get the best information. And so try to do what you can to learn the proper genetics. And if you pick up these modern chicken books, is what I'm talking about here, and you guys might see this in the dog world too, they just don't go into genetics like they should. They're not really covering the parts that are most important. They really go into the easy stuff. They try to, if they talk about genetics, it's only either a paragraph or maybe a page or two sometimes. They just don't cover it the way they should. So try to learn genetics the best you can. Okay. Try to learn the art and the science of selective breeding. Understand what makes up the breeding process overall, understand the different methods and how those methods become programs. So just, it's educating yourself, learning from maybe a little bit of trial and error. Hopefully you're not doing too much experimentation. Try to find the right mentors. That's the hard part.
That's the big thing. Yeah.
Right there. Yeah.
That's the big thing. So Kenny, we done talked about crossing, but I got to ask you this question in a different way. So here's the question. Once you have established a proper family, is there ever any reason to outcross?
The only way, and I would still use a subline to do it, never sacrifice or take the chances with your actual foundation, would be to use a subline. The only time to outcross would be if the genes that you need just aren't there. You've bred them every which way you can. You've changed the mates up. You try to do this and try to do that, and you just can't produce the traits that you need. That would be the only reason. And if you use some of these other programs, you could run into like an inbreeding depression. You can run into issues where they're starting to get smaller. They're starting to have other issues because they're just not proper breeding programs. But the way the Founders Program is set up, if you've done, okay, I can't pull it up here. I'm so used to my system.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
I was going to show you a graph, but the way the Founders Program is set up is it has the seed vow stage, and then it has the transformation stage. And the first few stages of the Founders Program is what we call cleanup process. Mm-hmm. And if you do the cleanup process properly, and you go into the transition stage, moving into the foundation stage, like you should, like the Founders Program shows you, you should have weeded through all the problems. You should have everything you need to replicate that family, to purify that family, to improve that family. And if you use the Founders Program properly, you should never have to add outside blood. Now, if you just use some of these other programs out there, like we call them the trio method, the 1/16th infusion method, the 5/8, 3/8, I can guarantee you're eventually going to bring in outside blood. You just are, because they're just not set up properly. A good program sets you up properly, cleans them up properly, gets you into the foundation stage properly, so that all you're doing is cloning them from then that moment on. And then after that, it's just maintaining them. And it's easier than you think. It really is.
Let me get this question in to you, Kenny. Kenny, I saw an episode of you talking with a doctor about ivermectin. Could you discuss your thoughts on ivermectin when it pertains to chickens?
It's a very potent drug, very good one. It does the job really well. But we should, and this is how we used to do it when I was younger. We had it on our shelf, but we only used it when nothing else worked.
Mm-hmm.
It's very toxic. It's hard on the animals, man. And if
Oh,
you
really?
use it wrong, it can be really bad. But I'm a big proponent of not using medications at all. That that may be hard for dog breeders because you're dealing with smaller numbers and there's an ethical thing going on there, and you got to find. I understand you guys' dilemma, I really do. But when it comes to chickens, we can hatch so many, we can eat them, and if they're not right, we can throw them away. I hate to say it that way, but so we can hatch a lot to get down to the ones that are really healthy. And I don't promote worming. I don't promote medications, and the only vaccinations that I promote are the ones that are heavily prevalent in your area that you may be dealing with. Other than that, some people vaccinate for everything. I just think that's a really bad idea. And anytime you're medicating, a lot of times when you're vaccinating, you're only hiding the weakness. I want strong animals. You know what I mean? I don't want to hide the weakness. I want them to surface so I can call them out.
Right. Here's a question from Vicente. If you're breeding for workability, does appearance matter at the beginning of a program?
Well, back to the complete package, basically. For an animal to be able to do the purpose for which they are bred, they have to have the structure to go with it. You know what I mean? And so when we're breeding, we're looking for animals to breed. We want them to be as close to the complete package as possible. So that means their appearance, their structure, their form and structure has to be right. You know what I mean? And then we have to breed the animals that are showing the highest intensity for performance. Okay. And we're back to polygenic traits, bringing to the highest intensity, improving them over time. The problem people see they get themselves into is when they're trying to improve both conformation and performance, and they're not seeing the level that they thought they should get from one breeding. Those are both polygenic traits. They take many years to improve. You just got to keep breeding to the highest intensity, and over time you will improve them. So that's why they freak out. They're not getting what they want. So they do the cross, they get the hybrid vigor, and then they get what they think they wanted, but it's temporary. It just not passed from generation to the generation. So, yeah.
Okay, got you. Somebody said something here. I guess it's this one of your members, maybe. Hello from Oregon. I like the spiral breeding methods for a part of a program with fowl and a little bit dogs. Yeah, so this must be one of your guys.
I don't know if he is or not, but it's an interesting question. Spiral breeding method is same as clam mating. A lot of people call it a rotational system. A spiral mating system or that kind of rotational system works good with an established family. Works terrible with animals that are not closely related. You just don't get the improvement that you're looking for. Improvement is either slow or non-existent with that kind of method. So it only really works when you have a well-established family where all the animals within the family are closely bred, or they're highly related, I guess you could say. So it's a really good method actually, but used wrong, no.
Is it a maintenance program?
It can be considered a maintenance program for a lot of people who don't want a lot of pens. They don't want to do a lot of single mating. They want to be able to group all their birds together and mate them that way. It's actually an ingenious method. Basically, what it is for like, and this can work for chickens. It works for all animals. Is you have 3 clans, at least 3. You can have more. You have 3 clans. All the females remain in one clan, and then the males are moved from clan to clan each generation. So let's say the 3 clans are, the first one's red, second green, blue, green. Okay, red, blue, green. Those are the 3 clans. So all the females from the blue clan stay with the blue clan. The blue male next year gets moved to the I know I'm getting my colors mixed up. Red, blue, green. So from red to blue, then the next year you're breeding him to the green family. And then all the other males are rotated too. So basically all the females stay within one clan and all the males are rotated. So it's giving you, what it's giving you is genetic diversity without bringing in outside blood. Like I said, it works really good, but only when you have an established family. If you've got a lot of genetic variation, you're seeing a lot of variability throughout the offspring, nothing's uniform, nothing's consistent, they're not able to repeat themselves, and you put them into a clan mating or spiral mating system, it doesn't work. It doesn't improve anything. You know what I mean? And the only improvement you can do is through selection, in that it's all about the numbers. So basically, if you have a certain amount of females within a family or a clan, all you can do is cull out the worst ones each year, keeping the best ones. Okay. And hoping that the males you're using are really high quality. So all you can do as far as selection is you're always just culling out the worst. That's all you're doing. Yeah. It's a good
selection.
Yeah, it's a good system when you do it right, but not for animals that are hybrids or crosses or unrelated. It just doesn't work.
Doug says here, I only vaccinate in the first year with dogs. After the puppy phase, parvo and distemper is rare in adults. Well, at least in my area. Yeah, you got to do you got to do the rabies shot, Doug? I know in this state we have to do it. Yeah. So how dang, Kenny, that's pretty powerful. What you said, that you breed towards resistance even with worms. You never worm them.
Okay, so no, I don't actually. I haven't wormed my birds in 15 years or more. Okay.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, when you first get them, let's say for chickens, you buy a trio. Then you don't know how the other person breeds them, raises them, and takes care of them, and how much he medicates them. And if he worms them all the time, chicken breeders, they'll worm their birds. Some of them every 2 weeks. It's crazy. Some of them, it's a common practice to do it every month, and then you have some people do it every 6 months in a year, which is very rare, but they do. Okay.
Right.
So when you get them, I always say, okay, you got to do everything you can to keep the birds that you got, your seed fowl, alive. And you may have to do exactly what they do. You may have to medicate them. You may have to worm them. You may have to do everything that they did just to keep them alive. But once you get the offspring, you need to work away from the wormers. You need to work away from the medications. And you get to a point when you're not worming them. You're not medicating them. And you're only breeding to the healthy. And you're getting rid of the sick ones. So if they die, they weren't meant to be there. Okay. And if they're sick, they don't have the proper constitution, constitutional vigor, whatever, all that stuff. You want to breed only to the healthiest ones. And if that means you got down to one cock and hen, that's enough to move forward. That's what you do. You get rid of everything else. In time, they will develop an immunity to the elements in their environment. They'll be more disease resistant. But you got to keep them. Well, you got to practice biosecurity. Okay. And let me tell you a story real quick.
Okay.
When I was young and I just met my mentor, Tony, and he came over and he was looking over my birds. He was showing me which ones I didn't look right. He had to cull, and yeah, okay, that one looks okay, but this one is stilted. You got to do this. And he started noticing some sick birds, and he's going, you need to cull all these sick birds. You're not going to create a strain with these sick birds. I go, oh, don't worry about Tony. I got all the medication. I got it handled. He goes, well, let me see all your medication. So I took him into my tack shed. I says, and I had a whole shelf full of I had every medication you could think of. I felt like I had everything taken care of. I just figured that's what you're supposed to do. And a lot of people think that. So he started looking at the medications and trash can, boom, smash, smash, smash. He was throwing them all in the trash can. And I was like, oh my God, all I could think about is I'm going to have to buy all those over again. And that was a lot of money. And he said, Kenny, Uncle Tony just did you a favor. He goes, breed to the healthy ones, get rid of the sick ones, and you'll thank me later. And for the first few years or so, I kind of felt like I was making a mistake because I was culling a lot of birds and I was getting very few that were good. But over time, I think it was like 5 years. Within 5 years, I didn't have a sick bird on my yard. All my birds were good. I wasn't running a hospital anymore. And to this day, I still don't medicate. I don't vaccinate. I don't worm them. And I've got the healthiest birds out there that I know of. Yeah.
Yeah. Let me ask you something. It seemed to be a pretty easy process for you to find a mentor.
I don't know
What
about
what
that. I just got lucky.
is that what it is, Kenny? Because
Yeah.
you're like, man, I got this dude, that dude, this
Yeah,
dude.
I
How
got
did you approach him?
well, it's funny, you meet people and they introduce you to people. That's how most of it happened. And I just think I have that kind of thing. I attract people. Any
Mhm.
industry I've found myself in, I always felt all the biggest names always seem to attract to me somehow. I don't know how to explain it. My wife says it too. When I was playing golf, I attracted all the big names with that too. When I was flying airplanes, all the big names attracted to me then too. I just tend to do that. But like Tony was an interesting one. Is I was trying to find good birds, and I was talking to a friend of mine, and she was saying, "Oh, I know someone who raises the ones you're looking for." I go, "Really?" His name is Tony. So she gave me his number, and so I might have waited a week or two, and I made the phone call, and his wife answered, and Tony was out of town. And I said, "I'm just looking for some birds. Do you have any for sale?" And she says, "Yeah, come on over." And so we sat in me and my daughter sat in her living room and talked with her for a while. I knew what she was doing. She was measuring me out, trying to figure out if I was a good person. And she goes, after a while, she goes, "Okay, you want to get some birds?" I go, "Sure." So she took me up and was showing me around. And she goes, "What do you want?" I go, "Well, those chicks right there, I'll take." And she goes, "You want any more?" And I go, "No, those chicks will be fine." So I took them and I raised them. They were really good birds. I was in awe of everything I was seeing from the living room, all the paintings on the wall and stuff. I was like, "Oh my God, I'm in the right place." And the chickens were beautiful. And I raised them for about a year or so, and I wanted to get more. So I called them up again, and Tony actually answered the phone. And I said, "Hey, Tony, this is Kenny. I had bought some chickens from your wife about a year ago or so. I'd like to see if I can get some more." And I could, I could tell from the tone of his voice, he wanted to get me. Okay, he wasn't too happy about his wife selling me those birds, and he's like, "Oh yeah, okay, yeah, come on over." And I said, "Oh crap!" I could just tell from the tone of his voice. And my brother was with me. I go, "Vinny, you're coming with me." I don't know what to expect from this guy, but I want to go ahead and go over there. And so we went over to Tony's house. We talked with him, and he was a little off at first. You could tell he was pissed off, but he lightened up pretty quick. I think he felt who I was and the kind of person I was and how eager I was to learn. And we actually kind of hit it off right away. And I soaked up everything he was teaching me. We spent hours and hours on his porch talking about chickens, talking about breeding, talking about the structure of the bird, the importance of the bird, all that stuff, the history of the bird, the evolution of the bird, for years. I can't tell you how many times we did that. I'd go up like sometimes 2 times a week. I'd go up, help him take care of his chickens, and we sit on his porch and just talk chickens all night, having wine or soda. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I just learned so much from him. And then from him, I took the information he gave me. I did more research. That led me to other people. I learned what they taught me. I did more research. It just progressed. So it just happened for me. I just got lucky.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it's hard. I understand how hard it is to find a mentor.
Kenny, you full of surprises. You flew planes. You's a ex-pro golfer.
Yeah.
Y'all know this about this guy, man?
I fly aerobatic airplanes, actually.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
I
Okay.
actually was doing aerobatics and had an engine out with no place to land. I actually had crashed an airplane because I had no place to go. All I
Are
could
you
do was
serious?
flare it in the trees. Yep, that's all I could do.
Oh, wow. Wow.
Yeah, it didn't
Yeah.
stop. I got right back up and did more aerobatics, and then I moved from an aerobatic airplane to I start teaching people how to fly.
Who's
Yeah.
the most famous golfer you ever played against?
Um. Well, the tour at the time. you know.
Oh, you was yeah. Oh
Yeah.
God, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. We had a guy from our state, John Daly. Is that what his name
Oh, yeah,
was?
yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, yeah.
I think he might have came after me.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I kinda left when Tiger Woods was coming on.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
okay. Yeah, yeah.
I lost my sponsors, so I
Mhm.
was done. Started raising
Right.
chickens again.
Okay. But you started with chickens as a very young
Oh,
man,
yeah, I
right?
was like, 7 years old when I got my first chickens, and I always
Mm.
tell that story, but if it's fate, it's fate, okay?
Mhm.
I just loved having chickens when I was little, and I
Right.
might have been a little bit older when my dad brought home, a dozen no, actually, I think it was 10 baby chicks. It was, they were just Rhode Island Reds, okay?
Mhm.
And, it turned out that one of them was a rooster. Well, that basically started my interest in breeding right there.
Mhm.
I got an incubator. I was wanting to prove them right from the beginning, and I was into it ever since. And I right from the beginning, I wanted to learn more and more about breeding
Mhm.
and showing them and all that kind of stuff. So that's how it started.
Mhm.
I kinda wonder if I woulda never got that rooster, which were all supposed to be pullets. I might have raised chickens for a while and then went on to something else and never looked at
Right.
chickens again. Yeah.
Right. Right.
Yeah,
When
it's
did
fake.
when did you say I got it?
What do you
I
mean?
got it. Like for it's like when you figure like, hey, I know this breeding thing. Like I know it's an ever learning
Yeah.
thing, but when did you consider yourself to be like I'm a master breeder now?
I I sometimes don't feel that I am in a way.
Mm-hmm.
I'm always
Mm-hmm.
learning, you know? I just know I know more the person okay, it's like this. I right, as far as, like, you, I know maybe I know more than you.
Mm-hmm.
And that's good enough for me. So the people that I'm working with, I just happen to know more than them.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I'm still running into people that know more than me in some areas,
Mm-hmm.
which is good. I love it.
Right.
So do I ever feel like I arrived? No, I do pinch myself that we have the Breeders' Academy that's doing so well, and we're really enjoying ourselves with the shows. And me and Nancy and me, we were like, "Wow, can you believe this? We're actually doing this. This is so fun. I can't believe we're actually doing this." But I still feel like I'm improving. I don't ever feel like I arrived.
Right.
So, yeah.
Is there anything like honestly like for it like I wish the dog world would concentrate on this because I think you guys are really misunderstanding. Is there anything? I know outcrossing might be a issue with us, but is there anything like you guys might want to pay attention a little bit over here? Look.
I The biggest thing I see all the time, and I understand where it comes from, but if they only knew there was a better way, is they're just so convinced that they have to bring in outside blood, that they're just so afraid of inbreeding or anything that resembles inbreeding when they don't really understand that there's a way to get around that. We do have safeguards like in the Founders Program that you can use that would prevent the inbreeding depression that they're afraid of. That's the biggest thing I notice is that
Mhm.
they're always thinking that they have to add outside blood. I see that all the time, all the time. It's
Yeah.
the biggest obstacle.
Right. Yeah. Because it almost once I started looking into you, it made me like think like, dang, yeah, we do all this work and then we just like, come on, I got to bring some more. I got to bring something totally different in,
Yeah,
but I
why?
just did all this work.
Yeah, I mean, I saw that in the chicken world too. A lot of the so-called big name breeders that are out today, they have this thing they call they say they have to infuse new blood. I see it all the time. It just drives me crazy. Like what they'll say is they go, "My birds are pure. They're as pure as the day I got them. I only have to add outside blood to refresh in the blood every 5 or 6 years." I'm like,
Hmm.
"No, you didn't refresh them. You recombinate them. You changed them forever."
Hmm.
And they don't realize there's another way. They don't need to do that, you know.
Right.
They
Right.
still believe that today, and they're some of the most popular breeders out there right now.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah.
That goes back to the old wives'
Well,
tales
I
and
think it does, and I think they think they're doing the right thing because I've been hearing this since I was a kid. Since
hmm
I since I got into game fowl is the biggest thing. Hell, even Tony, as much as he knows and how much I learned from him and I still fight about inbreeding. He says,
hmm
"Never inbreed, don't ever inbreed. Inbreeding's the worst thing you can do. Avoid it at all costs." I'm like, "Tony, let me show you. And I'll show him. And he goes, yeah, that sounds good, but no, I can't do that. No inbreeding.
Mm-hmm.
He's the only mentor I've ever had that just still fights that inbreeding thing, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That's kind of amazing.
Let's put it this way. If you look at Robert Bakewell, he was a 17th century agriculturalist. He invented selective breeding. He invented the creation of how to create breeds and strains and varieties. Okay. And the way he did it was he understood right away the value of inbreeding. That he said that without inbreeding, new breeds, new varieties, and new strains cannot be created. Some level of inbreeding has to happen. All you guys that are watching this right now, all your dog breeds wouldn't exist if there wasn't some kind of inbreeding that happened. So there was somebody who created that line that that understood and knew the value of inbreeding. Inbreeding has to happen. We're talking about brother and sister. I know that's hard for some people, but I'm inbreeding, and when I'm talking about inbreeding, I'm not talking about father to daughter, mother to the son, or aunt to nephew, or uncle to niece. Some of those are line breeding. Some of those are what we call in and inbreeding. But actual inbreeding, brother and sister, some of that has to happen to lock in and fixate those genes enough to where they're able to repeat themselves and reproduce themselves over time. The Founders Program has a little bit of inbreeding in it, but it has to happen for them to create a true, pure strain.
Right. Doug says, my wheels are still turning on the 3 groups of females and rotating the males. It gave me some ideas. It gave you some ideas, bro. But you got to go into I'm telling you, because don't fuck this up. I'm telling you. Doug.
Yeah.
Hey, you better holler at Kenny, man. Because it's a system.
He would love stage 6 of the Founders Program.
Oh yeah. Let me run this last question by you. You answer it you answer however you want. I would like to hear Kenny run through how you created a whole new breed.
For me and a lot of breeders, it's the Founders Program. The Founders Program is just set up so well. I can't tell them exactly how to do it here, but just know there's a process for it. And like we have a genesis phase. See, the program's broken up in this 3 separate phases, and each phase has its stages. So we have the genesis phase, we have the transformation stage, and the foundation stage. And each stage takes you one step to the next. You're basically cleaning up the bloodline. Then you do a transition period where it moves you into the foundation stage, and then you have a maintenance, time when you're maintaining them and keeping them going. So all I can tell him is just make sure he finds the right Adam and Eve, which we call our seed fowl, which would be your seed dogs, and get started. But
let me bring this comment up. He said 4 brothers, sisters, and dogs. I don't know about that. I've seen some bad genes and traits expressed.
Okay,
but Doug, that's the point.
Yeah. Okay. Now, a lot of people think that inbreeding creates bad genes. Inbreeding is only expressing the genes that are already there. Okay. And that's the idea. And that's why I always say, especially in the inbreeding stage, is you want to produce as many animals as you can, because you're going to get some bad ones. Okay. You're going to get some mediocre ones, but you're going to get some good ones too. It's the good ones you want to move forward with. A lot of people use inbreeding. They see some bad stuff coming out and they freak out and think, oh my God, inbreeding is terrible. It's the worst thing you can do. Inbreeding, that means inbreeding did its job. But the only time it doesn't work when you don't produce enough animals to select from. But yeah, you're going to get some bad ones, and it's only expressing what's already there. Yeah, that's exactly right.
Yeah,
that's the good thing about it. You just got to embrace it.
The offspring tells you everything.
Yeah, the offspring will tell you everything you want to know about the parents, and the offspring will tell you whether you're going in the right direction. Absolutely.
For Zero American Bulldogs, game fowl can withstand double or more the inbreeding than dogs before inbreeding depression kicks in. What's your thoughts on that, Kenny?
He's absolutely right. I mean, we can do a lot of inbreeding with chickens before we see the effects of inbreed depression. So when we're dealing with animals, because their genetics are different, then we do have to be careful not to do too much inbreeding. I agree. But to do no inbreeding, I think you're making a mistake. Yeah, let's put it this way. if you're just bringing in new blood every now and then, you're not creating anything. You're not maintaining anything. You're not actually improving anything. You're just breeding. You're just producing animals. That's all you're doing. So what do you really want? You got to ask yourself, what do you really want to do? What do you want to accomplish? Do you want to create a true pure strain that you can call your own? Or are you just trying to produce animals so you can sell them? Because there's a big difference between the two.
What kind of breeder is that?
What do you mean?
Just making animals just to be doing. Is that our 85%? Right.
85%ers, I think,
Yeah.
for the most part,
Yeah.
where's my list? Well, yeah, it's the ignorant breeder and the neglectful breeder and the mixer and crosser. Yeah, they're just
Right.
producing animals. They're not learning. They're not improving. They're not trying to strive. They're not striving to create a strain that they call their own. If you're just in and inbreeding or just bringing in new blood all the time, that's not really breeding to me.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody can do that.
Right.
If you have the
Right.
money to buy superior animals, and all you're doing is taking advantage of hybrid vigor, and it's very short term, very temporary, And the only way to stay ahead of it, is to keep bringing in new animals every year. I don't know. That's not a game I want to play.
Right. Let me go back to this comment. Doug is saying something here. He says, "I've personally seen better outcomes from half brothers, sisters, even with the same family."
Well,
But
that's in and inbreeding. That's not really
right.
creating. You're not really you're not concentrating the genes enough to actually fixate or lock in any genes or lock in any traits. In an inbreeding, I mean, it can be used in an established family to maintain the family, but when you have a family with a lot of genetic diversity, a lot of variables, a lot of variation, whatever, they're just not coming uniform, you're getting different things, then that in an inbreeding like that doesn't really improve much. It just doesn't. Like cousin to cousin, aunt to nephew, uncle to niece, half brother, half sister. That's all in and inbreeding. A lot of people use that. They call that inbreeding because they're just afraid of true inbreeding, and they just never really they might get a good offspring from time to time, but overall, it's just not a way to create, improve, or maintain a strain. It just doesn't. It's not fast enough. It would take forever if you know how to select them. And I don't like that way, actually.
Right. Frizera, man, if I'm getting it wrong, forgive me. For Frizera American Bulldogs, I think he's saying here, litter mates have the same amount or share the same. Hold on. Ugh. Litter mates share about the same amount of DNA as humans' first cousins. What's your thoughts, Kenny?
Okay, let's put it this way. My brothers and my sister, we all have different DNA. So that's why the only thing we can do is we can use the offspring to prove the parents. We can never use a brother or sister to prove their brother or sister. We can never use the parents to prove the offspring. We can only use let's say a particular animal to prove the worth of the parents. The DNA isn't identical. They are different. Even the purest of families, the offspring are going to be a little different. That's meiosis right there. That's the crossover bit. That's how the genes are recombinated, distributed. Meiosis produces variation, which produces very unique gametes, even in the purest of strains. Okay. And so once you understand that every individual you produce is different. And that's why it's so important to pick the right one to move forward with, because they are different, even though they look the same. And the phenotype is one thing, and that's all we can select towards because that's what we can see. But it's the genotype, the hidden genes, the hidden traits that are exposed from time to time through the offspring, through little variations, which we either select through. We either select for them or against them. Okay. So the genome is the unknown factor. All we can actually select for is the phenotype. So that shows you that the DNA is different from between the offspring, their brothers and sisters, and the generations after that. That makes sense?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Yeah. Doug is pressing you tonight.
How meiosis works, because
Okay.
it really dispels and disproves a lot of what people think. about the offspring that they're producing and how close they are, that kind of thing.
Right. Doug is making you earn your money tonight, Kenny. He says an example: a father to daughter, and then breed those half brothers, sisters, / cousins.
I don't understand.
A father to daughter litter mates.
Yeah. So basically, he's line breeding, or he's doing a back cross from father to daughter.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then he breeds the half brother or sister to the cousins. I don't
Yeah,
understand. I don't
Doug,
understand.
clean that comment up, if you would.
Yeah, I don't understand what he's saying there. A lot of people will confuse line breeding, and line breeding is actually one of the simplest programs or methods to follow. Everybody makes it more complicated than it has to be. But they actually confuse line breeding with back crossing. Most people are back crossing, don't know it.
Right. Yeah, that's one of the first things we discovered when you came on the show.
Yeah.
And for Zara is American Bulldogs. He is talking about a DNA test I talked about on your show the other night. He says, I use embark in dogs to see dominant and recessive traits in dogs. I wish I could do that with chickens because I keep having yellow leg pop out in my round head families once in a while.
Well, I have a lot of questions for him because, there's not enough information there for me to react to, actually, because that can mean so much. But dominant recessive traits are actually so small compared to polygenic traits. Once you understand which traits are dominant, which are recessive, then you can mate your birds properly. And then if he understood where yellow, I mean, so he's probably being around he's probably wanting the white. Both white and yellow are dominant, and he's never going to get around that. Since the yellow was introduced to him, he's always going to get some yellow. If he wants the white leg, I don't think he's saying that here, but I'm pretty sure that's what he means. If he just wants the white, he has to keep breeding to the white, and over time, the yellow will diminish and eventually be hidden. But it's really tough because they're both dominant. They actually are dominant.
Oh, they are? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I got a question here. Can you test for mitochondrial DNA?
Yeah, they could, but they have to have something to compare it to, for one thing. But for us, as like chicken breeders, we can see the difference in our hens. Like if a hen is really active and healthy and produces really strong offspring that just fly out of the pop out of the shell, and they just grow and develop properly, and they never get sick, we can assume right there that the hen has really good mitochondrial DNA. If we have a hen that she's like off the roost late every morning, she's the earliest one to go on there, she doesn't move very well, she doesn't seem very active, the offspring she's producing aren't very healthy, then we know right away that hen has really poor mitochondrial DNA. So there are some tests, but I'm sure if you got something, it would be really expensive, but it would only mean anything if you had something to compare it to. So, yeah.
Is squirrel? These questions are rolling in now, Kenny. Sorry.
Questions.
Is squirrel tail a poly trait in roosters?
Yeah, it's a polygenic defect. It's a defect, but it's a polygenic trait. Yep.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. I've never seen this person before. Let's see what she has to say.
Okay.
Hi, Ms. Nancy. How are you? Would you say that it's real important to know the dominant and recessive traits of your varieties and breeds?
I think you need, when you look at your breed and you look at the phenotype that they're the phenotype that they're expressing, you need to know what you're looking at. It's the phenotype that's going to, just looking at the bird, for the most part, you're basically looking at you're looking at the dominant and the recessive traits, and knowing that will help you mate your birds properly. The only polygenic traits would be conformation of body as far as the phenotype is concerned. But polygenic traits more has to do with behaviors, temperament, performance ability, broodiness, all the things that you can't see just by looking at the bird, but more of the function of the bird. Those are the in some ways the most important. But no, you really need to know if when you're looking at a bird and you see the comb, you see the color of the plumage, you see the leg color, you see whether it has a muff or not. Those are all either recessive or dominant, and sometimes they're even sex linked. And if you understand that, then you can mate them and breed them properly. You do need to know that. You need to. I don't remember what her question was exactly, but I hope I answered it.
Yeah.
I'll go after her later.
Okay. Doug says an example of my previous statement of half siblings in the same family. Breeding a father to two daughters, litter mates, and then breed a male half brother, cousin to female half sister.
Yeah, that's just what we call in and inbreeding, and it just doesn't. It maintains a family if it's a well-established family that's already breeding and is uniform and consistent, and they're able to repeat themselves. Then you can get away with that kind of breeding. Other than that, if you're dealing with animals that have a lot of hybridity or hybridization, or I'm saying the wrong words, but good. What was I gonna say? If they're crossed or not related, or they're mongrels, or then it's just not going to get you there. They have to be well established. They have to be uniform. They have to be consistent in the traits that they produce, and they have to be able to repeat themselves. Then that kind of breeding would be fine. It would work, but you're just not going to make the progress that you think you're making from that kind of. We try to stay away from in and in breeding as much as possible.
Okay. Okay. He says, Doug, I've seen that matchup work better than the full sister brother without expressing defaults, overbites, cherry eye, and skin issues.
See, that's why we do a cleanup process in the beginning of the founders program, because we weed out those kind of things.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then you can do the breedings we're talking, the kind of breeding we're talking about. If you don't clean them up properly, and you go into like what we call a cloning process, it's not exactly cloning, but and I don't want to get too far into it, but if you get into the foundation stage and you do the cloning process and you have all that variation and all those kind of defects still wanting to come out, then you didn't clean them up. You didn't clean them up properly in the beginning of the program.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right.
So,
Right. And
that's why people cross them, because that covers up and hides those kind of problems. So I understand why they do it, but they're just producing animals when they do that. They're not actually breeding a family.
mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And once you get into the founders program, and being that it ain't a lot of breeders that can tell you, that won't tell you how to do it, man, Ken, it ain't no way they can know. A lot of them.
The sad part is that I think most people don't know.
Right. Yeah.
Because when they start talking about breeding best to the best and that kind of thing, then I know they don't know, So
Right. Right. So like Doug, so some of the questions you asking, if you go in the academy, it'll kind of clear it up, and then it's gonna be like it's just a maze of knowledge. And I jump to different subjects. I might want to hear this day. I might want to,
yeah.
and I wear my earbuds at work, and
Well,
just
what I
hear.
tell people to do is go
Mhm.
through the Start Here pages.
Mhm.
That'll take you through a lot of the programs and courses that you kind of need to know when you get started.
Right.
But really try to understand the Founders Program, so that when you listen to all the videos and you listen to or watch the other programs, then you have some reference. You have some way. Then hopefully you're thinking about the Founders Program and how those things relate to it. Then you'll understand it better.
Mhm.
Yeah. If you're just listening to programs without any direction, then you're learning something, of course, because we give a lot of information.
Mhm.
But it would be better. You'd get better knowledge out of it, and you get more out of it if you had something to direct it towards, which I think
Right.
should be the Founders Program. Yeah.
Kenny, let me let you get this one too. I'm sorry, man.
Oh, it's okay.
Let me keep you at least 10 minutes.
Sure.
Okay. Hold on a minute.
I just hope I'm helping everybody, because
They coming in, man.
norms
Hard.
here. I'm going against all the things that they fought against, that they didn't want to talk about, or they didn't believe in or thought they shouldn't do. So
Right. So this is a good question that you cover a lot, but a lot of people may not know. If best to best isn't the way, then what's the way?
the Founders Program, a proper breeding program, best of the best. Okay, if you look at the Founders Program and the way it's set up, there are times when it looks like you're doing best of the best. You are breeding the best, you're breeding the father to his best daughter in some cases. You're breeding the best brother maybe to his best sister. I get that. But it's more than that. When you're just looking at all the animals you have available and you're just breeding the best male to the best female, there's more to it than that. That's very limited. You're not, yeah. It's hard to go into it without actually talking about the Founders Program.
Right. Yeah, we got to get them in there somehow so they can really see
At
this
least
stuff.
look around, check it out. Maybe it's not for you. Maybe it's just not your thing, and then you can cancel anytime. That's the only thing I can say.
Yeah, because the questions y'all asking, that's what I was doing. I think I watched Kenny for about a year digging. I'm saying, I'm gonna figure this shit out. Now what'd he say? I'm gonna put this shit together. And then when you go in there, man, I'm telling you,
says I try to re-engineer what we talk about in the show.
it's too hard because they watching and what they say. You're not gonna get
good information though. I mean,
right? You do, yeah.
Are good, but if you want to know the Founders Program, then you need to check it out.
You do.
You skirt it. Someone said it the other day, one of our members, he says, you guys said everything that's in the Founders Program, you guys said in your shows at one time or other. But to put it together, you actually need to join the membership and check it out because we don't put it together. It's like all the puzzle pieces are there. But to be able to actually put them together properly, you need to join the program. I hate to be like that, but this is how we make a living. I don't have another job. This is what I do for a living.
Well, yeah. I mean, look at here. I don't mind it because, like, it's like power in the wrong hands. You know what I mean? I kind of look at it like that, and then it keeps it brings all the serious people in a riff-raff way.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying? When you kind of seclude your content.
I think people have the wrong impression about some websites. If they got in there and looked around how much information's in there and how it's set up, they were like, oh, $50 a month, that's all for this? They really would think that way because there's just so much information in there that they can, even if you're a dog breeder, maybe, I know we reference chickens a lot, but the information in there applies to all animals, and it's just going to it's going to expand your knowledge. And in the meantime, it's going to improve your skills. It really will. And it's going to, we always say, not only do we want to change the way you think about breeding, but we want to change the way you breed we say fowl. We want to change the way you breed your fowl. And in this case, in some cases, it would be dogs. And you just got to think of it like that. And I'm hoping that what we teach changes things, changes the trend, makes more real breeders. Because what I'm seeing is people are just breeding. They're not producing anything. They're not creating anything. They're just producing offspring. They're not going anywhere with it.
Right. Kenny, check this one out. I watch his podcast hoping that he spills the beans.
Well, we do, but not like you think we do. Like Frank said, sometimes we say it, but we use different words. Frank is between Nancy, me, and Frank. We know how to spill it without spilling it. Only my members know when we spill it.
Right. There was a comment saying, you simplify it to science for dummies. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I lost that comment.
I say it that way, but I get it. Yeah.
Yeah. He says y'all talking code a lot.
We do. We don't. Yeah. Yeah. It's hard, but we've made an art of it. Yeah. Gotten good at it.
Yeah. So,
you guys know we have a members roundtable after every show. So when we do the shows on Friday, we go into the website and all the members meet. Not all of them, but a good number of the members go in there and they meet us there. And then we spill the beans there. We talk freely. We talk about the Founders Program. We go in deep. We don't hold back. They can ask anything they want. Yeah. Oh, she's talking about it now. Yeah, the members roundtable. So between the master's class videos and the members roundtable, trust me. And then in the members roundtable, you can I just said it. You can ask any questions. It's just like this. You can get into the comments and you can ask anything you want.
Right. Well, Kenny, I think I'm gonna let you go. Do you got any closing remarks or anything you'd like to say?
Not really. I just hope I gave some information that you guys can use. I hope I enlighten you in some way. I hope you maybe rethink the way maybe you've been doing some things, and maybe we can change the trend, create more breeders. That's my goal, you know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he says I am very close to joining.
You know,
Well,
I get that, you know, and
mm-hmm,
like you watched the shows for about a year before you decide, and I know a lot of
mm-hmm,
people do that. I hear it all the time that it's not exactly all that they're trying to re-engineer everything all the time. Is that it takes them that long? I get it, you know, it's a commitment. And here's the other thing too, is when you become a member, there's no tests. We're not making you do anything in particular. Um, you can learn at your own pace whenever you want to. You learn as much as you want. Um, you can go in once a week if you want, whatever. You know, we're not testing you, or it's more relaxed than you think.
yeah,
You
it's at
know,
your pace. Yeah.
yeah, exactly.
Uh-huh. Right, right. Doug, one advantage to gang bred American Pit Bull Terriers, you get to see the family breeding. Yeah, you do, and they're known for having. There's some of the guys that know how to really breed them animals for what they do. I'll just say that.
They're
Yeah,
committed.
yeah, 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 for real.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, I always say that, like chickens, the game fowl breeders can learn a lot from the domestic chicken breeders, and the domestic chicken breeders can learn a lot from the game fowl breeders.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
And they tend to want to separate themselves and act like, well, you're not one of us, but no, they should work together. And that's one of the things too about our show and the Breeders Academy is I'm seeing game fowl breeders helping domestic chicken breeders. I'm seeing domestic chicken breeders helping game fowl breeders. They're all working together and getting along. And that's what I always wanted. You know what I mean? That we all have to work together. It's the same
Mm-hmm.
thing. And the chicken breeders are helping the dog breeders too, you know? So, yep.
It's animal breeding.
Breeding is breeding. Yep.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. Well, Kenny, boy, you did another one.
Well,
You did it
I had
again.
a lot of fun. This is good.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So yeah, everybody. We thank everybody for tuning in. We gotta let Kenny go, and man, he never disappoints, does he, guys?
I had fun.
All right, Kenny. We'll see you the next time.
Thanks a lot.
All right,
Appreciate
y'all
it.
have a good one. All right, man. Hey, good show.